The wind whispered gently outside, rustling the bare branches of the old oak trees lining the driveway. Through the slightly frosted window, a soft gray light seeped in from the moon, illuminating the wooden floorboards of the cozy living room. Inside, the cabin smelled faintly of pine, burning wood, and a touch of vanilla from the candle flickering quietly on the mantel. The fireplace crackled softly, sending tiny sparks dancing into the air, each one disappearing before it could even reach the ceiling. The room was otherwise silent, save for the occasional pop and hiss from the fire, a rhythm as soothing as a heartbeat. The furniture was simple, worn in a way that spoke of years of use and comfort. A deep armchair sat angled near the hearth, its cushions inviting, promising hours of rest if one were to sink into them. A thick wool blanket was draped over the back of the chair, its fibers soft and warm. On a small wooden table next to it rested a steaming mug of cocoa, spizz of chocolate-scented steam curling lazily into the air. The cabin felt like a world apart from the bustling streets of any city, a retreat built for quiet thought, for letting the mind wander and the body relax. Outside, the snow had begun to fall gently, each flake delicate and precise, blanketing the world in a serene white. The trees swayed slightly under its weight, branches dipping and rising as the wind shifted. It was a soft, rhythmic dance, almost hypnotic in its consistency. A fox trotted past the window for a moment, leaving a trail of tiny paw prints in the fresh snow, before disappearing back into the shadows of the forest. The quiet of the woods beyond seemed endless. A natural symphony meant only for those willing to listen. Inside, a journal lay open on the wooden desk near the window, its pages slightly curled at the edges. A pen rested across one page, as though someone had paused mid-thought, leaving a small narrative suspended in the stillness of the room. The words on the page were simple, yet reflective, chronicling the small wonders of the day, the way the sunlight had filtered through the frost in the morning, the sound of distant birds chirping even as the world slept under snow, the faint scent of smoke lingering from the fireplace. Each line was a gentle meditation, a quiet acknowledgement of the world in its subtle beauty. A clock ticked softly on the wall, its sound steady and unobtrusive, blending seamlessly with the rhythm of the fire. The hands moved slowly, marking time in a way that felt almost unimportant in the grand scheme of the evening. The world had slowed, as if acknowledging the need for rest, for a pause from all the hurried motion of everyday life. In the corner of the room, a small stack of books leaned slightly to one side. Their pages held worlds within them, stories of ordinary lives lived quietly, and of moments that felt infinite because they were savored slowly. The fire's warmth spread through the room in waves, curling around every corner, touching the small details that made the cabin feel alive. The wooden beams above had a rich, golden hue in the firelight, their grain showing the slow passage of years, each knot and imperfection a mark of history. The floorboards creaked softly under the slightest pressure, a gentle reminder that the house was not a museum but a living, breathing space meant to be inhabited. Outside, the wind continued its quiet song, whispering through the trees, carrying the scent of cold earth and pine needles. Occasionally, a gust would make the window rattle lightly, a sound that was startling only for a moment before settling into the background, becoming part of the calm atmosphere. The night was deep, dark, yet comforting, the kind of darkness that invited introspection, that made one aware of the safety and warmth inside. The fire shifted in the fireplace, and with it, shadows danced across the walls. They moved slowly, almost imperceptibly, forming shapes that seemed familiar yet fleeting. For a moment, a shadow looked like the outline of a cat stretching lazily before curling back into a ball of warmth. Moments later, the flicker of light altered it, and the shadow became something entirely different, a quiet reminder that even in stillness, the world was always in motion. The cabin seemed to breathe along with the fire, Each flicker, each pop, each whisper of wind outside echoing a pulse of calm. In this space, nothing demanded attention, nothing pressed for urgency. Even the simplest of actions, pouring another cup of tea, adjusting the blanket, turning a page in a book, felt meaningful, as if time had expanded to accommodate the gentle pace of life here. From the hearth, a tiny spark rose, only to vanish almost immediately into the darkness above. The sound of it settling back into the fire was barely perceptible, yet it added to the intricate melody of the night. The flames danced higher for a moment, revealing the textures of the logs, the layers of char and grain, and then subsided into a steady, consistent glow. Each movement was rhythmic, predictable, and reassuring. Like a lullaby composed by the universe itself, the snow continued to fall, piling silently on the roof and the ground outside. Occasionally, the moonlight would break through a patch of cloud, illuminating the world in silver tones, casting the forest in stark contrasts of light and shadow. Everything moved slowly, as though aware that the night was meant for calm, for reflection, and for sleep. The air in the room was crisp yet warm, carrying the faint scent of the outdoors mingled with the aroma of burning wood and cocoa. Breathing it in was soothing, a reminder that the world was alive with simple pleasures, each one waiting to be noticed. A gentle sigh escaped from somewhere, perhaps the room itself, perhaps the consciousness of someone sitting quietly, absorbing the serene rhythm of the environment. Hours seemed to stretch and fold over one another, each moment filled with subtle detail. A creak in the floor, the distant sound of an owl hooting in the woods, the gentle crackle of the firewall. These small things formed a tapestry of calm, a gentle backdrop against which the mind could wander without urgency or concern. As the night deepened further, the sense of time blurred. The world outside faded into a soft, indistinct gray under the snow, and inside, the room glowed steadily. Every detail seemed magnified in the firelight, the weave of the blanket, the grain of the wood, the tiny movements of the flames. There was a perfection in this imperfection, a beauty in the mundane that invited quiet contemplation. The journal on the desk beckoned quietly, inviting the observer to reflect, to record, or simply to sit and watch. The act of writing became secondary to the act of noticing, of being present in the gentle unfolding of the evening. Each word written would carry with it the memory of the crackling fire, the softness of the chair, the quiet music of the wind, embedding the night into consciousness as a memory of calm. The cabin seemed to exist outside of time, a sanctuary where the rhythm of the fire and the whisper of the wind dictated the pace of life. Nothing else intruded, and the mind could rest, wandering freely, tracing the edges of memory and imagination with soft, deliberate care. Every now and then, a faint noise from the forest would punctuate the night, the flutter of wings, the rustle of fur across the snow. But these sounds were not alarming. Instead, they were gentle reminders of life continuing in harmony, that the quiet of the cabin was mirrored by the subtle activity of the world outside, and in the stillness, there was a sense of completeness. Each breath, each flicker of the flame, each subtle sound contributed to a feeling of safety and serenity. The night carried on, slow and deliberate, offering the perfect backdrop for reflection, relaxation, and the gentle descent toward sleep. The fire crackled steadily, and as the room settled into its gentle rhythm, the awareness of the day faded into the background. The mind became like the soft shadows on the walls, flowing and moving, but never forced, never hurried. There was a deep, unspoken understanding here that the night was meant for quiet, that time was meant for gentle passage, and that within these walls, peace was the natural state of being. Outside, the snow fell, undisturbed and soft, a continuous, gentle sound that blended perfectly with the crackle of the fire. It was a lullaby of winter, a soothing rhythm that encouraged the mind to relax, the body to sink comfortably, and sleep to come naturally, without hurry, without resistance. And so the night continued, slow and gentle, carrying with it the quiet comfort of warmth, the reassurance of soft sounds, and the deep, enveloping peace of being exactly where one belonged. The morning light seeped slowly through the frosted windows, painting soft streaks of pale gold across the wooden floorboards. Outside, the snow had settled into a smooth, untouched blanket, reflecting the gentle warmth of the sun in muted silver tones. A soft breeze occasionally rustled the bare branches of the trees, shaking a few loose flakes from their limbs so they floated lazily to the ground. The air carried the crisp scent of cold winter, mixed with the lingering aroma of the burning logs from last night's fire. Inside the cabin, the remnants of the previous evening's quiet lingered. The fireplace, now reduced to glowing embers, continued to radiate a comforting warmth that softened the edges of the room. A small kettle sat on the stovetop, slowly releasing curls of steam into the air, carrying the scent of brewed tea. The armchair by the hearth still wore the imprint of someone who had spent hours there, wrapped in a wool blanket, watching the fire dance. Its cushions appeared even softer now, inviting a return to that same restful peace. The wooden desk near the window held the open journal from the night before. A few pages had been filled with notes of fleeting observations, the way the frost etched delicate patterns on the glass, the distant call of a crow as it hopped along the snow-covered path, the occasional flicker of movement among the shadows of the trees. Each note was short, descriptive, almost meditative, as if documenting the subtle poetry of ordinary life in a quiet, isolated space. A small cat, sleek and gray, padded silently across the floor, pausing to stare out the window at the shifting light. Its tail twitched with curiosity as it watched the snow glisten before finally curling up on the rug in front of the embers, finding comfort in the gentle heat. Every movement was deliberate, slow, and calm, reinforcing the serene rhythm of the cabin itself. From the kitchen, the faint clink of a spoon against a mug echoed gently, followed by the soft hiss of the kettle coming to a boil. These were simple sounds, yet they felt harmonious, blending into the overall stillness. A pair of slippers were kicked off near the door, left in the same position as if the owner might return at any moment, resuming the calm activities without interruption. The forest outside was quiet, alive with subtle motions only noticeable if one paused and observed. A squirrel cautiously emerged from a hollow, its tiny movements precise as it searched for hidden caches of food beneath the snow. A faint rustle of leaves suggested a distant deer moving slowly along a narrow path, leaving delicate tracks behind. The natural world continued at its own pace, perfectly synchronized with the quiet interior of the cabin. On the mantel, a small candle flickered briefly in response to a tiny draft, casting a delicate shadow across the wall. Each flicker emphasized the textures of the room, the wooden beams, the worn surfaces of the furniture, the gentle contours of blankets and cushions. Everything seemed to exist in soft focus, as if the world itself had softened to encourage reflection and calm. The journal beckoned again, inviting thought and observation. The act of writing here was less about producing words and more about immersing in the moment. Descriptions of the gentle snowfall, the slow play of light, and the comforting warmth of the cabin were written not as a record, but as a meditation. Each sentence a step toward stillness and relaxation. The morning passed slowly, marked by subtle changes, the sun climbing higher, shadows shifting imperceptibly, and the fire embers slowly fading. Each moment offered an opportunity to notice, to breathe, and to appreciate the gentle details of a day lived without rush. The temperature in the cabin remained balanced, warm enough to soothe, yet cool enough to feel the freshness of the winter air drifting faintly through the slightly opened window in the corner of the room. The small stack of books remained untouched, their presence suggesting possibilities rather than obligation. One could open a page and drift into another life entirely, or simply let the books serve as silent companions to the rhythm of the cabin. The soft crackle of remaining embers in the fireplace served as an unobtrusive soundtrack, punctuating the moments with a natural cadence, steady and comforting. The smell of pine and burning wood mixed with the faint sweetness of cocoa, forming a scent that seemed almost like a hug for the senses. The floorboards creaked occasionally under the gentle steps of movement, reminding one that the cabin was alive, inhabited, and responsive to its small interactions. Even silence had texture here, thickened by the warmth of the room, the stillness of the snow outside, and the faint breathing of life within. As the day unfolded, thoughts drifted lazily, wandering across memories and simple contemplations. The mind could consider trivialities, recall moments of the past, or simply observe the quiet progression of sunlight across the walls. Each reflection was accompanied by the natural rhythm of the cabin, the steady glow of embers, the soft shifting of shadows, the gentle creak of wood, expanding and contracting with the warmth. A small breeze stirred the thin curtains near the window, letting a faint chill slip into the room for a moment before it mingled with the heat radiating from the fire. The motion was almost hypnotic, an invitation to slow down, to breathe deeply, and to feel the calm that the space effortlessly offered. The sunlight illuminated dust particles floating in the air, tiny specks that moved lazily, sparkling in the golden glow as if performing a quiet, endless dance. Minutes blended seamlessly into hours, each one carrying a subtle shift of sound, light, and warmth. A bird perched on a branch outside, calling softly, while the snow continued to blanket the earth silently. Inside, the kettle's whistling subsided, and the room returned to a steady, gentle quiet, punctuated only by the soft crackle of the fire and the occasional creak of the floorboards. The journal received a few more entries, noting the minor, beautiful aspects of the world, the faint trails left in the snow by passing animals, the delicate frost forming intricate patterns on the window pane, and the way the room seemed to exhale with every moment, offering peace and ease to anyone present. These were the small narratives of life in this quiet winter retreat. Stories that required no drama or urgency to feel complete. Outside, the forest remained constant yet dynamic. A distant owl's call traveled through the air, mingling with the subtle rustle of branches and the soft fall of snow. The natural symphony was steady, a reminder that life, even in its quietest forms, continued with grace and rhythm. Every sound, every movement was gentle, almost imperceptible, yet essential to the seamless sense of calm. Inside, the armchair remained inviting, the wool blanket draped casually across its back. The chair seemed to hold the memory of those who had sat there before, a quiet testament to the comfort and stability of the cabin. The room, in its simplicity and warmth, encouraged the mind to wander slowly, to engage in gentle observation, and to sink into a tranquil state that could easily carry one toward the slow descent of sleep. The afternoon light began to fade, softening into warmer golden hues as the sun approached the horizon. Shadows lengthened and stretched across the floor, creating subtle patterns that shifted imperceptibly with each passing minute. The fire had long been replenished, maintaining its comforting glow, and the room exuded a sense of gentle consistency, of time moving at its own deliberate pace. The cat stirred from its nap, stretching languidly before returning to its curled position in front of the fire. Each movement was measured, relaxed, a mirror to the room's rhythm. The scent of cocoa lingered faintly in the air, accompanied by the earthy aroma of the pine logs. The world outside seemed distant, muffled by layers of snow, reinforcing the cabin's role as a sanctuary of space defined by calm, comfort, and the softest attentions to the senses. Minutes continued to unfold in unhurried succession. The soft whistle of wind through the trees outside, the slow shift of shadows across the room, and the steady warmth from the fire created a continuous backdrop, a lullaby for the mind. In this space, Every small detail mattered, each contributing to a larger, encompassing sense of peace. Even as the day gradually gave way to evening, the cabin maintained its gentle embrace. There was a continuity here, an assurance that time had no urgent claim, that presence and attention were enough, and that the simplest of observations, the rise of smoke, the shifting of embers, the distant movements of wildlife could offer profound comfort. The evening settled slowly over the cabin, casting the forest outside into a soft twilight that blurred the edges of the trees and the snow-covered ground. Shadows stretched long across the cabin floor, painted by the firelight and the fading glow from the windows. A stillness hung in the air, deeper than the quiet of the day, a calm that suggested the world itself was exhaling, preparing for rest. Inside, the fireplace crackled steadily, sending tiny sparks up into the chimney and filling the room with a gentle, rhythmic sound. The warmth spread outward, curling around every corner of the cabin, touching the worn wooden furniture, the thick rugs on the floor, and the cushions piled invitingly on the sofa. A wool blanket lay draped over the back of a chair, its fibers soft and familiar, promising comfort to anyone who might sink into it. On the table, near the fire, sat a small tray with a teacup, still steaming gently, and a half-eaten slice of bread with honey. The aroma of warm tea mingled with the lingering scent of pine smoke and the faint sweetness of honey, creating a sensory landscape that was calm, familiar, and deeply reassuring. A small notebook rested beside the tray, its pages filled with careful observations of the day, the subtle shifts of sunlight, the delicate patterns of frost, the quiet presence of wildlife moving unseen in the woods. The snow outside reflected the soft light from the moon, casting a pale, silvery glow across the forest floor. Occasionally, a gust of wind would make the branches sway, sending down a few loose snowflakes that landed gently on the window pane. The movement was subtle and slow, mesmerizing in its simplicity, as though the world was performing a gentle lullaby. A rabbit hopped cautiously through the snow, pausing for a moment to sniff the air before continuing its measured path through the untouched white. Inside, the cabin exuded a sense of slow, deliberate life. The wooden beams above carried the history of countless winters, their surfaces warm under the glow of the fire. The floorboards creaked softly under the occasional shift of weight, a reminder that the cabin was alive, inhabited, and responsive to its subtle interactions. The steady rhythm of the fireplace, the faint whisper of the wind, and the occasional distant call of an owl created a harmony that encouraged deep relaxation. The cat stretched and yawned in front of the fire, curling back into a tight, warm ball. Its breathing was slow and steady, and the soft patting of its paws across the floor was almost imperceptible. Watching the cat move was soothing, each motion deliberate and unhurried, reinforcing the slow pace of life within the cabin. A lantern on the windowsill flickered softly, casting small pools of light that danced on the walls. The glow highlighted the textures of the cabin, the grain of the wood, the soft weave of the blankets, the subtle imperfections in the furniture, contributing to a sense of homeliness and quiet comfort. Every detail seemed intentional, though effortless, and the room felt like a space designed to nurture calm and reflection. The journal laid open on the desk, inviting attention. Each line of writing reflected a gentle awareness of the present, the way the snow settled silently on the ground, the soft hiss of the fire, the pattern of shadows as they shifted and changed with each flicker of flame. Writing was less about storytelling now and more about immersion, a way to document the quiet perfection of the moment. Outside, the forest seemed both vast and intimate, a place where movement was slow and deliberate. A deer stepped cautiously through the snow, its hooves leaving light imprints before vanishing into the trees. The occasional rustle of branches or the faint sound of distant water reminded anyone listening that life continued, even in the most secluded and tranquil settings. Each sound was gentle, a reminder of continuity and stability, inside the cabin. The evening deepened, and the fire maintained a steady glow. The room seemed to breathe with each flicker, each pop of burning wood contributing to a rhythm that was both comforting and hypnotic. The warmth embraced the furniture, the rugs, the blankets, and the small living beings within, creating a cocoon of serene safety. The sunlight had long faded, replaced by the pale illumination of the moon, reflecting on the snowy landscape and adding a calm silver tone to the room through the windows. Each shadow was elongated, soft, and changing with every flicker of the fire. The subtle patterns created a hypnotic visual flow, guiding the mind toward quiet contemplation and gentle reflection. A soft breeze occasionally slipped through the slightly open window, carrying the scent of pine and the crispness of the snowy air. It touched the cheeks lightly, cool and refreshing, before mingling with the warmth of the cabin. Every sensation, from the warmth of the fire to the soft rustle of the blanket, reinforced a profound sense of calm and relaxation. The cat stirred again, rising and stretching, then padding silently across the room to a small perch by the window. It sat watching the snow, ears twitching at distant sounds, before curling back into a comfortable position, once again allowing its breathing to slow and steady. Its calm presence added to the room's atmosphere, a subtle companion in the quiet, reflective evening. The kettle on the stove began to whistle softly, a reminder of a simple routine. Tea was poured, and the steam rose gently, blending with the lingering warmth of the fire. Every small action felt measured, important only for the comfort and quiet satisfaction it provided. The cabin was a space without urgency, sanctuary where the pace of life slowed and every sensory detail became a source of peace. Outside, snow continued to fall gently, each flake delicate, floating without urgency to the forest floor. The world seemed suspended in this slow, quiet motion, a dance without hurry or concern. Inside, the fire's glow cast moving shadows, creating a soft tapestry of light and dark, rhythm and stillness. The journal received a few more lines of gentle reflection, capturing the quiet progression of the evening. The writer's words flowed slowly, tracing thoughts and observations that were intimate, soft, and meditative. Each sentence contributed to a greater sense of presence, of awareness, and of surrender to the calm rhythm of the cabin. The fire popped softly, sending a small cascade of sparks up the chimney, and the warmth continued to radiate outward. The room felt timeless, existing beyond the strict measures of hours and minutes. Time here was determined by subtle changes, the shift of light, the movement of shadows, the flow of heat, and the gentle rhythm of the fire itself. A faint sound came from the forest, perhaps a bird calling in the distance, perhaps the rustle of a small animal moving unseen beneath the snow. The noises were so delicate that one could choose to notice them or let them fade into the background, each option equally soothing. Every sound and movement reinforced the sense of continuity, of life moving steadily, and of the gentle passage of time. The candle on the mantel flickered again, tiny shadows playing across the walls, and the room seemed to hum with quiet energy. It was the hum of comfort, of safety, and of a world slowed down enough for attention to settle on the present. Each breath of air, each flicker of light, each tiny sound contributed to the steady, immersive rhythm that invited rest. Minutes passed unnoticed, blending seamlessly into the hours. The snow outside covered the earth in a silent quilt. The fire maintained a constant warmth, and the room felt like an extension of the natural world itself. Every detail, from the textures of the blankets to the creak of the floorboards, reinforced the sense of calm and presence. The evening deepened into night, carrying with it a profound sense of stillness. The fire crackled softly, the cat slept contentedly, and the cabin exuded a quiet life that was uninterrupted and serene. In this space, thoughts could wander freely, slowly, without urgency, allowing the mind to rest and the body to relax fully, embraced by warmth, light, and the gentle rhythm of the world around it. night deepened slowly over the cabin, wrapping the forest outside in a quiet, velvety darkness. The snow reflected the pale glow of the moon, lending the world outside a soft, silver illumination. Trees stood like silent sentinels, their bare branches outlined against the night sky, shaking occasionally as a gentle breeze passed through. The only other sounds were the distant rustle of wildlife and the faint whisper of the wind, soft enough to lull even the most restless thoughts into stillness. Inside, the fireplace glowed steadily, its embers a constant companion in the tranquil night. The warmth radiated through the room, curling around every surface, touching the wooden beams, the rugs, and the worn furniture in a gentle embrace. The fire's occasional crackle was rhythmic, like a heartbeat, providing a soft auditory anchor for anyone immersed in the calm of the space. A thick wool blanket was draped over a chair near the hearth, its fibers slightly worn but inviting. Beside it, a mug of warm tea emitted faint tendrils of steam, mingling with the lingering aroma of burning pine and a touch of vanilla. Everything in the room was deliberately simple, yet it exuded a sense of care and comfort, as if every object had been placed with intention, ensuring that serenity could be found in every corner. The windows were frosted along their edges, tiny ice crystals forming delicate, lacy patterns that caught the moonlight and reflected it softly across the room. Outside, snow continued to fall quietly, each flake drifting down like a whisper, adding to the already thick, silent blanket covering the earth. Occasionally, a small animal's movement disturbed the snow, leaving behind faint tracks that hinted at the quiet activity of the forest at night. In one corner of the room, a stack of books leaned against the wall. Their spines were worn, pages slightly yellowed, each one containing stories meant to be savored slowly. The books were untouched tonight, silent witnesses to the room's calm. Yet their presence suggested the possibility of gentle exploration, the escape into other lives and experiences without ever leaving the warmth of the cabin. The cat, curled in a tight ball on the rug in front of the fire, shifted slightly, stretching one paw and then settling again. Its breathing was deep and even, matching the slow, steady rhythm of the fire. The soft padding of its steps across the wooden floor was almost imperceptible, adding a subtle life to the otherwise still environment. Watching the cat move was soothing, each action deliberate, unhurried, and perfectly in tune with the surrounding calm. A lantern on the mantel flickered softly, casting delicate, dancing shadows on the walls. The shadows accentuated the textures of the room, the grain of the wooden beams, the weave of the blankets, the worn edges of the furniture adding a visual rhythm that complemented the auditory rhythm of the fire. Each flicker of light contributed to a sense of quiet meditation, a gentle reminder that beauty existed in the simplest details. The journal lay open on the desk, waiting for reflection. The previous entries documented the day in a gentle, servant way, the slow drift of snow, the quiet footsteps of wildlife, the subtle patterns of light and shadow within the cabin. Now, more thoughts were added, describing the evening in detail, the warmth of the fire against chilled hands, the way the light shimmered on the surface of the wooden table, the faint scent of tea mixing with the pine smoke. Each observation was a meditation, a focus on small, significant details that might otherwise go unnoticed. Outside, the forest remained still, yet alive with soft movements, the occasional flutter of wings, the subtle rustle of leaves, and the distant cry of an owl punctuated the silence. Each sound was delicate, almost ethereal, blending into the background as a lullaby for anyone listening attentively. The snow absorbed much of the sound, making the world outside seem even quieter, more peaceful. Inside the cabin, the armchair by the fire remained inviting. Its cushions were soft, warm, and familiar, promising hours of restful sitting. The firelight highlighted the textures of the chair and the blanket draped over it, emphasizing the comfort inherent in these simple objects. Every item in the room seemed to exist in harmony, creating a space that encouraged both stillness and mindfulness. A kettle on the stove whistled softly, signaling water ready for another cup of tea. The small movements involved in preparing the tea, the lift of the kettle, the pour, the steam rising gently into the air added a rhythm to the evening. These small actions were calming, reinforcing the slow, deliberate pace of life within the cabin. Each sound and movement was subtle, almost imperceptible, yet contributed to the overall atmosphere of serenity. The snow outside shimmered faintly as the moonlight shifted through occasional breaks in the clouds. Shadows stretched and contracted on the forest floor, reflecting the steady pulse of the night. Even distant sounds, the faint call of a deer, the rustle of a fox moving through the underbrush, seemed slowed, measured, harmonious. The world outside mirrored the calm inside, reinforcing a sense of unity and gentle continuity. The fire crackled gently, sending sparks into the air, only to disappear before they could reach the ceiling. Each tiny explosion of heat and light was reassuring, a natural rhythm that encouraged the mind to settle. The warmth spread evenly, not overwhelming, but perfect for relaxation. The room exuded comfort, a cocoon where the mind could wander slowly, unhurried, and the body could sink effortlessly into rest. The journal received a few more lines of reflection, noting the subtle beauty of the night, the shifting shadows, the faint scent of pine, the quiet rhythm of the fire, the occasional movement outside the window. Writing became a meditation, a way to merge observation, thought, and the sensory experience of the cabin into a seamless, peaceful whole. The cat shifted again, curling closer to the fire, and a faint sigh seemed to fill the room, as if the space itself acknowledged the presence of calm and contentment. The cabin breathed gently with the fire, the wind, and the snow, forming a harmonious balance that encouraged anyone inside to relax completely. Minutes and hours passed slowly, seamlessly. The fire maintained a steady glow. The snow fell silently, and the cabin remained a sanctuary of warmth, light, and comfort. Time seemed suspended, measured only by subtle changes, the flicker of light, the movement of shadows, the soft hiss of embers. In this gentle rhythm, there was nothing urgent, nothing demanding, only the quiet, enveloping peace of a night meant for rest. And in the stillness of this night, the cabin offered everything needed for deep relaxation. The warmth, the light, the soft sounds, and the subtle presence of life within and outside the room combined to create a perfect lullaby. A lullaby not sung with voices, but with the natural rhythms of the world, the crackle of the fire, the fall of snow, the whisper of the wind, and the serene breathing of those present within this peaceful, isolated retreat. The night had settled into a deep, serene calm. The moon hung low over the snow-covered forest, casting silver light across the branches and the untouched ground. Each tree stood quietly, its silhouette softened by the gentle blanket of snow. Occasionally, a branch would shift slightly under the weight, sending down a small flurry of snowflakes that danced lazily to the earth below. The forest seemed suspended, timeless and tranquil, as though the world had paused to rest. Inside, the cabin exuded warmth and quiet comfort. The fireplace glowed steadily, casting a soft, flickering light across the wooden walls and floorboards. The warmth radiated gently, curling around every surface, filling the room with a sense of ease that was almost tangible. The crackle of the fire punctuated the silence, rhythmic and calming, as if marking time with a heartbeat meant only for stillness. The armchair near the hearth beckoned invitingly, the thick blanket draped over it, soft and familiar. A steaming mug rested on the side table, sending gentle wisps of aroma into the air, a mix of cocoa, pine, smoke, and the faintest hint of cinnamon. The scent seemed to settle into the mind as well as the space, soothing and grounding. The room, simple and unadorned, offered a perfect balance of warmth, light, and serenity. The journal lay open on the desk, its pages filled with notes that chronicled the quiet unfolding of the day. Observations of shifting light, falling snow, distant wildlife, and the textures of the cabin's furniture reflected a slow awareness, an immersion in the moment. Each word was deliberate, thoughtful, and unhurried, like the careful movements of the day itself. Outside, a faint rustle carried through the trees. A deer passed silently through the snow, leaving delicate footprints that glimmered in the moonlight. Occasionally, a small animal would move in the underbrush of fox, perhaps its presence marked only by subtle movement or a fleeting shadow. The world outside was alive, but it moved in harmony with the calm within, a perfect echo of the gentle pace maintained indoors. The cat, still curled in front of the fire, shifted slightly, stretching its paws before resettling in the warmth. Its breathing remained slow and steady, and the occasional twitch of its tail was the only indicator of conscious awareness. Watching the cat move was inherently soothing, reinforcing the slow, deliberate pace of life in the cabin. A lantern on the mantel flickered gently, creating dancing shadows across the walls. These shadows accentuated the textures of the room, the grain of the beams, the weave of the blankets, the worn edges of the furniture. Each flicker of light emphasized the beauty and simplicity, a gentle meditation for the eyes and mind alike. The kettle on the stove hissed softly, signaling water ready for another cup of tea. The act of pouring and stirring, subtle and unhurried, contributed to the overall rhythm of the evening. The room felt alive, not with activity, but with comfort, the quiet acknowledgement of small routines that provided structure, warmth, and reassurance. Outside, the snow continued to fall lightly, a delicate layer that softened the edges of the forest and muffled distant sounds. The moonlight glimmered across the untouched landscape, reflecting in the gentle glint of ice and snow. The faint call of an owl carried through the night, a distant and melodic punctuation to the otherwise silent symphony of winter. Inside, the warmth of the fire and the soft illumination of the lantern created a perfect cocoon of light and comfort. The blankets, the cushions, the familiar textures of the furniture all combined to foster a sense of security and ease. The quiet rhythms, the crackle of embers, the hiss of steam, the soft patting of the cat formed a gentle, continuous meditation. The journal received a few more lines of reflection, capturing the beauty of the night and the comforting presence of the cabin. Notes of light, sound, scent, and temperature were recorded, but in a way that celebrated the simplicity of the evening rather than chronicling events. Every sentence invited slow contemplation and presence, a mindful engagement with the serenity surrounding it. The fire popped softly, sending a small cascade of sparks upward. Each spark dissolved quickly, unnoticed, yet contributing to the room's sense of rhythm. The warmth continued to radiate, steady and predictable, creating a cocoon of comfort that invited deep relaxation. Minutes passed seamlessly, blending into hours. Shadows lengthened and shifted as the firelight danced. The snow outside glistened faintly under the moon, and the forest continued its quiet nighttime activities. Every sound, every flicker of light, every scent in the room contributed to a unified sense of peace, guiding the mind gently toward rest. The cat curled further into itself, completely still except for the slow rise and fall of its body. Its presence was comforting, a living element of calm in the stillness of the room. Even the smallest movements, the sway of a curtain in the breeze, the shifting shadows of the fire, the faint tick of a distant clock were integrated into the room's rhythm, each one enhancing the meditative quality of the space. The evening deepened, and a profound stillness settled over the cabin. The fire crackled and hissed intermittently. The snow fell quietly outside, and the natural light faded to a delicate interplay of fire glow and moonlight. Every element of the cabin seemed attuned to the needs of those within. Comfort.com and a gentle invitation to let go. The journal lay closed now, the pen resting across the pages, the reflections safely recorded. The room's tranquility needed no words, only awareness. The fire, the snow, the forest, and the subtle presence of life within the cat. The gentle movements, the warmth combined to create a timeless rhythm. Time passed unnoticed, measured only by the gentle cadence of natural sounds and the fire's quiet song. The room was a sanctuary where thought could drift without urgency, where every sensory detail, the smell of pine and cocoa, the warmth of the fire, the softness of blankets, the glow of lanterns provided a steady, comforting presence. The night continued, slow, deliberate, and serene. Shadows danced and shifted. Snow sparkled faintly outside, and inside, the fire's warmth enveloped every corner. The cabin existed in harmony with the natural world, a perfect environment for slow breathing, gentle thought, and the gradual descent toward sleep. The cat stretched once more, settling back in front of the fire, and a soft exhale seemed to fill the room, as if the cabin itself recognized the peace it nurtured. The fireplace glowed steadily. Shadows danced softly, and the night pressed gently onward, carrying the promise of quiet rest and undisturbed sleep. In this space, everything aligned to foster deep relaxation. The warmth of the fire, the subtle illumination, the textures of the room, the soft sounds of life and nature, and the comforting routine of small, deliberate actions. The world, both inside and out, existed at a pace designed for calm reflection and the slow, natural rhythm of rest. The night had reached its deepest quiet. Outside, the snow lay undisturbed, a soft, reflective blanket that captured the subtle glow of the moon. The trees stood silently, their branches outlined against the dark sky, still and patient. Every so often, a gentle breeze would stir a few loose flakes, sending them drifting slowly to the ground. The forest seemed to hold its breath, a vast expanse of calm and gentle motion, perfectly attuned to the tranquility of the evening inside. The cabin was a haven of warmth and stillness. The fireplace glowed steadily, its embers crackling occasionally, a gentle rhythm that filled the room with soft, calming sounds. The warmth reached every corner, wrapping the furniture, the rugs, the blankets, and the small cat in front of the fire in a comforting embrace. Each flicker of flame cast dancing shadows across the walls, creating patterns that shifted slowly and hypnotically, soothing the eyes and the mind alike. The cat still curled on the rug, stretched lazily, and then returned to a peaceful position, its slow breathing a quiet, steady presence. Its fur caught the light of the fire, giving it a warm, soft glow. Watching the animal, the mind could relax, following its calm, measured rhythm, sinking into the same gentle pace that the cabin encouraged. A soft scent of pine, vanilla, and lingering cocoa filled the room. Every breath drawn here was imbued with comfort, grounding the senses in the simple, soothing details of the cabin. The furniture, worn and familiar, offered tactile reassurance, while the blanket draped over the chair promised warmth for anyone who sought it. Every object contributed to a sense of safety, presence, and quiet meditation. The journal lay closed on the desk now, its reflections recorded, yet its presence remained a subtle invitation for thought. The room encouraged observation, mindfulness, and gentle awareness. Every sound, the faint hiss of the fire, the occasional creak of the floorboards, the distant whisper of the wind was part of a unified rhythm, a lullaby of natural and domestic life in perfect harmony. Outside, a deer moved silently through the snow, pausing occasionally to lift its head and observe the quiet forest. Its tracks glimmered faintly under the moonlight before disappearing into the white expanse. The occasional call of an owl echoed softly through the trees, blending seamlessly with the gentle rustling of the wind and the subtle patter of falling snow. Each sound was deliberate and slow, reinforcing the calm, steady pace of the night. Inside, the lantern flickered softly, throwing gentle pools of light across the room. Shadows danced and stretched across the walls, highlighting textures, the grain of the wood, the softness of blankets, the worn edges of furniture, creating an atmosphere that encouraged contemplation, comfort, and the slow unwinding of thoughts. The kettle on the stove hissed gently, releasing faint steam that mingled with the warmth of the fire. A cup of tea was poured, its gentle warmth offering a small, tangible comfort that complemented the encompassing serenity of the cabin. Even the smallest details, rising steam, shifting shadows, flickering flame contributed to the sense of calm, reminding the mind that here, time moved deliberately, slowly, and without urgency. Minutes passed in seamless continuity. The fire crackled softly, snow fell quietly outside, and the cat slept soundly in front of the embers. Every detail, every subtle movement and sound reinforced the feeling of safety, tranquility, and profound relaxation. The cabin existed in harmony with the natural world outside, its sanctuary perfectly attuned to the gentle rhythms of life. The evening deepened further, and the glow from the fire softened. Shadows lengthened, light flickered delicately, and the entire space seemed to hum with quiet, steady energy. The room invited the mind to wander gently, to observe and reflect without pressure, and to surrender fully to the serenity that had permeated every corner. The snow continued to drift slowly outside, each flake moving at its own deliberate pace. The forest remained quiet, alive with subtle motion, yet entirely peaceful. Each sound branches swaying, distant wildlife, the faint call of night birds blended into the background, forming a soft, continuous lullaby that encouraged sleep, relaxation, and mental ease. Inside, the warmth, light, and gentle sounds converged to create an environment where thoughts could drift freely, slowly, and without interruption. The fire's rhythm, the subtle flicker of the lantern, the soft breathing of the cat, and the distant, muted noises of the winter forest combined into a seamless sensory embrace, inviting the mind and body to relax completely. As the night wore on, the room seemed to settle further into calm. The fire's glow became steady and soft, the shadows quiet and gentle, and every sensory element, from the warmth of the air to the texture of the blankets to the faint aroma of pine and cocoa, worked in unison to foster deep, undisturbed rest. Even the most minute details contributed to the overall peace. The slight creak of the floorboards under the cat's movement, the faint sound of the kettle settling, the subtle shifting of light and shadow across the walls. Every sensory element harmonized to create a quiet symphony of calm, a lullaby that required no words, only presence and attention. Time in the cabin now seemed suspended, measured not by hours or minutes, but by the gentle rhythm of natural and domestic life. The fire, the snow, the moonlight, the cat. The subtle sounds of the forest all combined into a cohesive, continuous atmosphere of serenity. The night pressed gently onward, carrying the promise of rest. Every element of the cabin, every sound, light, and texture contributed to a sense of calm, so complete that the mind could finally let go. The body relaxed fully, the thoughts drifted lazily, and the quiet rhythm of the fire and the snow guided everything toward a peaceful, uninterrupted sleep. And in this still, warm, and gentle space, the cabin offered its final gift, the deep, enveloping peace of a night fully embraced, a world perfectly slowed, and the serenity of being exactly where one belonged. The fire's soft glow, the shadows' quiet dance, the winter forest outside, and the subtle, steady life within all converged, creating an unbroken, tranquil rhythm, a lullaby of warmth, calm, and rest, carrying anyone present effortlessly into sleep.